When it comes to the world of movies, horror especially, a lot of studios like to copy each other's homework. Often they're not too blatant about it, but think of how many movies try to capitalize, say, on Friday the 13th success, or the amount of found footage flicks that popped up in the wake of Paranormal Activity. But other times, well, you probably just won't believe how they ever expected to get away with it. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 9 horror movie ripoffs you won't believe exist. Number 9, Bloody Murder. Written by John R. Stevenson and directed by Ralph E. Patillo, Bloody Murder and its sequel, Bloody Murder 2 Closing Camp, are like kindergarten collages of ideas and scenes snipped from better movies. The most obvious lift, of course, is from Friday the 13th. The setting is Camp Placid Pines, covering for Camp Crystal Lake, of course, and the killer wears a hockey mask and boiler suit combo. There's also a suspiciously similar plotline involving an urban myth of a bullied and abused child who, fully grown, now supposedly haunts the woods near the camp. His name as well is Trevor Moorhouse, because I guess Voohouse would have been maybe a step too far. To be fair though, Big Trev isn't actually the main killer here. Instead, Placid Pines' not-so-happy camp counselors are being terrorized by a psychopath with a grudge because of an incident in the past that sees a person cosplaying as Moorhouse in order to carry out the murders. Both films spin out various unlikely red herring scenarios before the mass murderer is revealed, and if that sounds oddly similar to the plot of every Scream movie ever, then congratulations, you've just identified the other major lift this franchise makes from the canon. Number 8, Creature. A huge multinational corporation sends a ship to investigate an alien presence. While investigating, an alien monster finds its way aboard and infects the crew, turning some of them into parasitized extensions of itself. Paranoid and isolated, victimized by gruesome death and sinister sabotage, the crew are forced to fight back, eventually ejecting the creature through the airlock and then blowing it up. That description that I just read out there reads as though it was written in a deliberate attempt to cannibalize the best storylines and set pieces from both Alien and John Carpenter's The Thing, which, by an astonishing coincidence, is exactly what the experience of watching Creature is actually like. When it comes down to it though, Creature isn't really a truly terrible movie. There's a little talent at work here, which unfortunately makes the brazen plot theft all the weirder. It's kind of like shoplifting snacks when you can afford to pay for them, just doing it for a laugh, I guess, because why not? Number 7, Pet Graveyard. Unfortunately, they can't all be pleasant surprises, and Pet Graveyard is the very definition of an unpleasant surprise. From Mockbuster Factory Millman Productions, hang on, I'm definitely going to have to phone Ash and ask her about that one when I finished here. Pet Graveyard, as should be obvious from the title, is a ripoff of Stephen King's Pet Sematary, churned out to cash in on the new 2019 adaptation of the novel 30 years after the original movie was released. At least, that's how you'd expect things to go, wouldn't you? Because it turns out that Pet Graveyard is not an unofficial remake of Pet Sematary, and the only cash-in here is the title and the poster looking extremely similar. So, what blockbuster movie is this movie mockbusting, I hear you ask? Well, it's 1990's brilliant Flatliners, in which a gang of unfeasibly handsome young movie stars deliberately create near-death experiences and unwittingly bring the ghosts of the past back from beyond the veil. In classic mockbuster fashion here though, everything is done tongue-in-cheek, and throwing subtlety out the window, the movie's antagonist here is actually a guy dressed up as the Grim Reaper, with a distinctly bored-looking Sphinx cat occasionally in tow as well. You kind of have to be impressed. This is a rip-off hiding as another rip-off. Number 6, Offerings. Enormously influential, John Carpenter's classic 1978 slasher Halloween still holds up as one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Offerings, on the other hand, is one of those so bad it's okay schlockfests beloved of horror fans across the globe. But everything here lifted from Halloween is awful, from the blank face mask of the killer to the familiar soundtrack to the childhood issues of the murderer in question. Funnily enough, it's where Offerings strays from its rigid template that it starts to entertain, with some genuinely good comedic moments that actually land the way they were intended. You kinda get the impression that had the director just gone for an out-and-out parody, that they could have delivered something memorable. Number 5, Great White. Released outside of Italy simply as Great White, this bad photocopy of Jaws essentially follows the same plot as Spielberg's classic, just free of the restraint that the film's original director displayed. And that's because the filmmakers here clearly thought that the only thing wrong with Jaws was the slow-burning menace, so here the film introduces its scene-stealing Quint variant early on, played by Vic Morrow in one of his last roles, and the shark bites the duplicitous mayor in half before dragging a helicopter underwater. Unlike the others on this list, this was so blatantly a rip-off that the film's planned North American release was halted after Universal Pictures successfully sued to have it blocked. As a result, it has never been released for home media or shown on TV in the US. Of course, that didn't stop people getting bootlegs to see it for themselves to see just how close the two movies were. And it didn't stop the original distributors either, who took advantage of the lack of widespread information about overseas movie schedules to release their movie in Japan as an official sequel to Jaws, and in Spain as the sequel to Jaws 2. That's just something you could do in the olden days, I guess. Number 4, Grizzly. Now, while shark schlock has seen a major renaissance in the last few years, with gulf sharks and even Nazi sharks getting their own movies, one of the earliest and, oddly, most faithful rip-offs of Jaws doesn't actually feature a shark at all. Not even a robot one. Despite the fact that Jaws was still on general release at the time, and that the elevator pitch for this movie, which was Jaws but with a giant man-eating bear, was ridiculously simple, 1976's Grizzly was only financed when it was brought to the legendarily dodgy B-movie producer Edward L. Montoro. The resulting movie is almost beat for beat, character for character, a rehash of Jaws. The only slight variation aside from the monster and the setting is the character that stands in for Richard Dreyfuss's Hooper in the story being killed before the grand finale. Oh aye, and the giant prehistoric bear is also killed with a bazooka because, of course it is, why not? Number 3, Bakazara, aka Bollywood Evil Dead. The Bollywood film industry is of course infamous for lifting plots and characters from Hollywood blockbusters wholesale, and hey, it can make for some really fun, daft movies. And that's exactly what happened with Bakazara, known unofficially as Bollywood Evil Dead, which follows Sam Raimi's 1981 classic The Evil Dead so closely that it's in danger of tripping over it. The only issue is, despite coming out decades later, the filmmakers don't seem to have the budget Sam Raimi did back in the day. And hell, that original movie was famously made on a micro-budget by talented and enthusiastic auteurs as a labour of love. It's actually not as bad as it sounds. The goofiness is a pretty good fit with the OTT aesthetic of the regular Evil Dead movies, and hey, if you're a devotee of the original movie and don't mind yourself a bit of Bollywood, you could probably find worse ways to spend 90 minutes. Number 2, Satan. Also known as Turkish Exorcist, which really says it all, Satan is essentially a scene-for-scene remake of William Friedkin's instant classic, made so swiftly that the original was still in Turkish cinemas when this was released. As you can expect, all the big moments from The Exorcist are here. There are some of the basic changes to the plot to make it read more naturally for its intended audience, but it's kind of shocking just how close this follows the original classic. There's a lot more that could have been done here, of course, but creativity was never the point of this endeavour. This is exactly what it says on the tin of pea soup it came in. No more, no less. Number 1, Mahakal. One of the last films created by schlock legends, the Ramsay brothers, a family business synonymous with popular horror cinema in India, Mahakal is more or less a straight lift of Wes Craven's 1984 classic A Nightmare on Elm Street, only with an added extra 30 minutes or so of goofy comedy and song and dance numbers to get the crowd going. The dedication to the bit here is actually kinda impressive, as the Ramsay brothers have religiously copied almost everything that isn't a Bollywood-style embellishment. The camera angles, the scene setups, the deaths, which are also cribbed from other entries in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, by the way, and even the soundtrack, which is essentially a re-recorded version of the original Nightmare on Elm Street score. The thing is, unlike other movies, Freddy Krueger is not scary because of the knives on his fingers or the scars on his face. He's scary because he's the grotesque embodiment of the fear that we cannot keep our children safe from the horrors of the world. This dude, though, he's just a big guy in a cheap mask. I'm afraid there's no substitute here for the original. Even Hollywood found this out when they got Jackie Earle Haley to play Freddy in their remake. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think about these weird rip-offs of popular movies, and are there any interesting and funny ones that I missed off here? While you're down there as well, could you please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.